My mother had an affair with my best friend for 6 months. My father caught them together. Years later, my fiancée betrayed me by contacting my mother behind my back for 4 months, and what I did left them speechless. I'm 29 years old. I work in software sales, and there are still days when I have a hard time believing that everything that happened was real. I mean, when people ask me why I don't talk to my mother, or why I ended a 2-year engagement with someone who supposedly loved me, I don't even know where to start. The truth is that my life was pretty normal until I turned 23, when I discovered that the two people I trusted most in the world betrayed me in the most twisted way possible. And no, I'm not exaggerating. You know, this isn't one of those dramas where people say they were betrayed because someone forgot their birthday. This was literal. My mother had an affair with my best friend, the guy I grew up with, the one I played video games with until 3 in the morning, the one I was planning to backpack through Europe with someday. Yeah, that same one. I guess I should start at the beginning. My family was always, let's say, normal. My parents, Raymond and Christine, had been married for like 25 years when all this exploded. My father was 51 years old at the time, worked at a logistics company, was one of those quiet and dependable guys, you know, the kind of father who never missed school events and who helped you with math homework, even though he didn't understand half of it. My mother, Christine, was 46 years old, much more outgoing than my father, always organizing dinners with neighbors, active in the neighborhood book club, that kind of thing. They seemed to get along well, or at least that's what I thought. I never saw big fights. There were no signs that something was wrong. But looking back, I guess there are things you don't see when you're not looking for them. Wyatt and I had been friends since middle school, basically brothers. We met in 8th grade when I moved to the neighborhood, and he was the first guy who talked to me at the new school. We spent all our time together, literally all of it. He'd sleep over at my house almost every weekend, and my mother would make his favorite pancakes on Sunday mornings. My father would take him fishing with us. He was part of the family, you know what I mean? By the time he was in his early 20s, Wyatt was living in an apartment not far from my parents' house, working in construction, and we were still super close. We watched games together, went to the gym, everything. Never. And when I say never, I mean never. Did it cross my mind that something weird was going on? But I started noticing weird things, probably a few months before everything exploded. Like Wyatt started spending more time at my house when I wasn't there. My mother would mention casually, "Oh, Wyatt stopped by to drop off some tools your father lent him, or Wyatt came to help me move some furniture." At first, I didn't think anything of it. Like, we'd been friends for years. It was normal for him to get along with my parents. But then I started noticing that, when the three of us were together, there was like a strange tension. I couldn't explain it exactly, but it was as if they shared inside jokes or something. My mother laughed too much at the things Wyatt said, and he looked at her in a way that, I don't know, made me uncomfortable, even though I couldn't identify why. One day I mentioned to my father something like, "Hey, Wyatt's been coming around a lot lately, hasn't he?" And my father just shrugged and said something like, "Your mother says she likes having company when I'm working." And well, my father worked a lot of hours. He'd leave at like 6 in the morning and come back around 7 at night, so it made sense. But there was something that wouldn't let me rest easy. A little voice in my head telling me something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it because, honestly, who wants to think their best friend and their mother are doing something inappropriate? It's one of those things your brain automatically rejects because it's too twisted to consider. Everything went to shit on a Tuesday afternoon. It was like February. It was freezing cold. I remember perfectly because that random detail stuck with me. My father normally got home around 7:30, but that day he left work early because he had to go to the dentist and the appointment got canceled or something. He got home around 3 in the afternoon. I was at my office, which back then was just a room I rented in a shared building, when I got a call from my father. His voice sounded weird, like flat, and he told me, "Isaac, I need you to come home right now. It's not your mother. I mean, she's physically okay, but I need you to come." I drove like crazy, thinking something terrible had happened, like an accident or a robbery or something. When I arrived, my father was sitting at the kitchen table with a beer in front of him, which was super weird because my father almost never drank alcohol, and definitely not at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I sat across from him and asked him what had happened, and he just looked at me with these tired eyes, like completely defeated, and told me, "Your mother is having an affair with Wyatt." I don't remember exactly what I said at that moment. I think I laughed, like a nervous laugh, the kind you let out when someone tells you something so absurd that your brain doesn't process it. I said something like, "What? No, that doesn't make sense. There must be some misunderstanding." But my father shook his head and told me that when he got home, he heard weird noises from the master bedroom, went upstairs and found them together. Together. You know what I mean. He told me that Wyatt ran out with his clothes in his hand, literally went out the back door, and my mother stayed there trying to explain, but he didn't want to hear anything. He told her to get dressed and leave the house for a few hours while he decided what to do. I sat there processing the information and felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. My hands started shaking and suddenly it was too hot in the kitchen, even though it was freezing outside. I asked my father if he was sure, if he couldn't have misinterpreted something, and he just looked at me like, "Isaac, I saw them with my own eyes. There's no way to misinterpret that." He told me that after Wyatt left, he checked my mother's phone, which she had left on the nightstand, and found messages between them that basically confirmed this had been going on for like 6 months. 6 months. My mother and my best friend had been having an affair for 6 months, behind my back, behind my father's back, lying every single day. I don't know how long I sat there without saying anything. My father eventually told me that my mother would arrive soon, that he had sent her a message telling her to come so they could talk about this like adults. Although honestly, I don't know what's adult about discovering your wife is cheating on you with your son's best friend. When my mother arrived about an hour later, I was still sitting in the kitchen, but I had drunk like 3 of my father's beers because I needed something to help me calm down. She came through the door and saw me there, and the expression on her face when she realized I knew, like, it was a mixture of shame and panic, but there was also something defiant there, as if part of her wasn't completely sorry. She sat at the table and tried to explain herself. She started with all the typical shit people say when they get caught. Like, "It was a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. Your father and I were having problems." And I exploded. I yelled at her, "What kind of problems justified fucking my best friend? How dare she bring Wyatt into the house, make him part of the family for years just to do this?" I asked her if she ever thought about me, about how this was going to affect me, and she started crying, saying she never wanted to hurt me, that things just happened. Things just happened. As if tripping and falling on someone's dick was something that happens by accident. I told her that was a bullshit excuse and that she had ruined everything, literally everything, for a guy who was 23 years old, half her age, and who was supposedly like a son to her. My father didn't say much during that conversation. He was just sitting there with this expression of absolute pain on his face, and that's what destroyed me the most, seeing my father, this man who was always strong and stable, completely broken. After like an hour of screaming and crying, my mother grabbed some things and went to stay at her sister's house. My father and I stayed there in silence for a long while, and then he told me, "I'm going to file for divorce. There's no going back from this." And I just nodded because, honestly, what else could I say? But I wasn't done. I needed to confront Wyatt. I needed to hear from his own mouth why he had done this. The next day I went to his apartment, and when he opened the door and saw me there, his face went white. He tried to close the door, but I had already put my foot in. I went in and basically pushed him against the wall. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to hurt him physically. But at the last moment I stopped because I knew that would only make things worse. Instead, I grabbed him by the shirt and asked him what the fuck was wrong with him. How could he do this to me after years of friendship, after my family treated him like he was part of us? Wyatt tried to stammer an explanation, something about my mother seducing him, that he didn't know how to say no, pure pathetic excuses. I told him he was a coward and that he was dead to me, that I never wanted to see him again in my life. I literally told him, "If I see you on the street, I'm going to cross to the other side. That's how little you mean to me now." I left his apartment and blocked his number, blocked him on all social, media, everything. And it was weird because part of me was devastated about losing my best friend, but another part was so furious that I just wanted to erase him from my existence. The next few months were a total mess. My father hired a lawyer and started the divorce process. My mother tried to call me like 1,000 times, sent messages, emails, but I didn't respond to any of them. Every time I saw her name on my phone, I felt this mixture of anger and disgust that made me want to break something. She eventually moved to an apartment in another part of town, and from what I heard from other relatives, Wyatt and her weren't together anymore either. Apparently, he ghosted her after all the drama, which, I don't know, gave me a dark satisfaction. Like, well, you ruined your marriage and your relationship with your son for a guy who didn't even have the guts to stay with you after. The divorce was finalized about 8 months later. My father kept the house, my mother took half the money from the joint accounts and some furniture, and that was it. 25 years of marriage reduced to signed papers and divided assets. I was still living in my apartment, working, trying to keep busy so I wouldn't think too much about everything. But the truth is, it did affect me. A lot. I started having trouble trusting people, especially in relationships. I went out with some girls during that year, but I could never really commit because there was always this little voice in my head telling me they were going to betray me eventually, that everyone does. But then, about a year after all the mess, I met Amber at a friend's barbecue. She was like 25 years old at the time, worked in marketing, and was one of those people who light up a room when they walk in. You know, always smiling, always positive. We started talking and connected immediately. She told me about her family, her work, her plans for the future, and I told her about my life. Although I didn't go into details about my mother at first, I didn't want to scare her off by telling her all the family drama in the first conversation. We started dating, and over time, things got serious. Amber was patient with me, understood. I had trust issues without me having to explain much. Eventually, about 3 months into dating, I told her the whole story about my mother and Wyatt. She was like shocked, gave me a hug and told me she was so sorry, that she couldn't imagine how difficult that must have been. She made me feel validated, like my feelings weren't exaggerated or unjustified. She told me she understood why I had cut contact with my mother, and that she respected my boundaries. We dated for 2 years, and they were good years, honestly. Amber met my father. They got along really well, and he told me several times that he really liked her, that he thought she was good for me. I agreed. For the first time since all the drama with my mother, I felt like I could trust someone again, that I could build something stable and healthy. So I proposed to her. It was nothing elaborate, just the two of us at a quiet dinner. And when I asked her if she wanted to marry me, she started crying and said, yes. We started planning the wedding, looking for venues, making guest lists, all that stuff. During this time, I was still not talking to my mother. She tried to contact me a couple more times during those 2 years, especially on my birthday and Christmas, but I never responded, and honestly, I didn't feel bad about it. I had set a clear boundary. She had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, and I wasn't obligated to forgive her just because she was my mother. Amber was always super understanding about this. Every time the topic came up, she'd say things like, "You have the right to protect yourself. No one can force you to have a relationship with someone who hurt you so much." Things with Wyatt had also run their course. About a year after the confrontation at his apartment, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that he had been arrested for robbery. Apparently, he had tried to rob an electronics store or something. They caught him and he ended up with criminal charges. I don't know exactly how long he was in jail. I think it was a few months, but honestly, I didn't care enough to investigate. It just confirmed what I already knew, that he was a piece of shit who made horrible decisions. What I didn't know is that after Wyatt was arrested, my mother apparently had some kind of existential crisis. I found out about this much later, but apparently, seeing Wyatt fall so low made her realize what she had lost. Her marriage, her relationship with me, her stability. She sent me a long email, like 3 pages, explaining that she had been in therapy, that she realized how much she had hurt my father and me, that she wanted to try to rebuild our relationship. She said she didn't expect me to forgive her immediately, but that she, at least wanted the opportunity to talk. I read the email, felt absolutely nothing, and deleted it. I told Amber about the email, and she asked me how I felt about it. I told her I felt nothing, that my mother had had 2 years to realize her mistake and had only deigned to try to reconcile after Wyatt, the guy she ruined her family for, ended up in jail. I told her I wasn't interested in her late repentance. Amber nodded and told me she understood, that it was my decision and that she supported me no matter what. Fast forward about 6 months after that email. Amber and I already had almost everything planned for the wedding, which was going to be in October, like something small and intimate, just close family and friends. One day, Amber told me she wanted to take me to dinner at a new restaurant that had opened downtown, that she had read good reviews and wanted us to try it together. Sounded good, so I agreed. In the day of the dinner, I dressed casual dressy, and we left. We arrived at the restaurant and the hostess took us to our table, but something felt weird immediately. Amber seemed nervous. She kept playing with her hair and looking toward the entrance. I asked her if she was okay, and she told me yes, that she was just excited about the dinner. We ordered drinks and were looking at the menu when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. I froze. It was my mother's voice. I looked up and there she was, walking toward our table with this hopeful but nervous smile. My brain took like 5 seconds to process what was happening, and when it did, I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. I looked at Amber and her face said it all. She knew. She had planned this. My mother got to the table and tried to hug me, saying something like, "Isaac, my love, I've missed you so much." I pulled away from her and looked at Amber with an expression that was probably pure fury. I asked her, "What the fuck is this?" And Amber started talking fast, saying I thought it would be good for me to have the opportunity to talk to my mother, that they had been in contact for a few months, that my mother had really changed and deserved a second chance. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Amber, the person I had trusted after years of not being able to trust anyone, had gone behind my back, had contacted my mother, and had organized this emotional ambush. I told her this was a betrayal, that I had made it very clear to her that I didn't want to have contact with my mother, and that she had crossed a huge line. My mother tried to intervene, saying something like, "Don't be mad at Amber, she just wants what's best for you." But I shut her down by telling her she had no right to speak, that she had no right to be there. I got up from the table, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of the restaurant. Amber came running after me, yelling my name, but I kept walking toward my car. She caught up with me in the parking lot and tried to explain, saying she just wanted to help me heal, that she thought I was being too hard on my mother, that forgiveness was important, and that's when I completely lost my composure. I yelled at her that it wasn't her decision to make, that I had set clear boundaries, and that she had completely trampled them. I told her that for 2 years she had told me she respected my decision, that she understood why I didn't want to see my mother, and all that time it had been a lie. I asked her how long she had been talking to my mother behind my back, and she admitted about 4 months. 4 months. For 4 months, Amber had been in secret contact with my mother, planning this forced reconciliation, lying about respecting my boundaries. I told her it was over, that I couldn't be with someone who betrayed me like that, who went behind my back after I made clear what I needed. Amber started crying, saying she had made a mistake, that she just wanted to help, but I had already heard enough excuses from people who betrayed me. I told her the engagement was over, that there would be no wedding, that I wanted the ring back. I drove home alone, and when I got there, I sat on the couch and just stayed there staring at the wall. I was furious, but also devastated. Again, another person I trusted had betrayed me, had crossed my boundaries, had decided they knew better than me what I needed. And the part that hurt the most was that Amber had been different, or at least that's what I thought. I thought she understood, that she respected me, but it turns out she didn't. The next few days were horrible. Amber tried to call me a million times, sent messages, and even came to my apartment, but I didn't open the door. I sent her a message saying to send someone to pick up her things that were still at my place, that I didn't want to see her. She eventually did, sent her sister to get her belongings, and that was it. I canceled everything for the wedding, lost some deposits, but honestly, I didn't care. I told my father what had happened, and he was furious too. He told me he was so sorry, that he thought Amber was different. And well, here I am now, about 8 months after all that. I'm 29 years old, single again, still not talking to my mother, and honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely trust anyone again. The situation with Amber confirmed all my worst fears about relationships, that people eventually betray you, that no one really respects your boundaries, that everyone thinks they know better than you what you need. My mother still tries to contact me from time to time, but I still don't respond. I don't know if I ever will. Part of me understands that people make mistakes, that everyone deserves second chances, but another part of me thinks that some betrayals are too big to forgive. And the thing with Amber, honestly, hurt me almost as much as the thing with my mother and Wyatt because I thought she was different. I thought I had finally found someone who understood and respected me, but it turns out she was just another person who thought she knew better. Now, I'm focusing on myself. I go to the gym, work, spend time with my father on weekends. He and I have become closer after all this, which I guess is something positive that came out of this shit. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh, if I should try to talk to my mother, but then I remember everything that happened and I realize I don't owe anyone anything. I set my boundaries for a reason, and the fact that people don't respect them doesn't mean they're wrong. Last week, a friend asked me if I was ready to start dating someone again, and honestly, I don't know the answer. Part of me wants to try, but another part is so afraid of being betrayed again that it prefers to be alone. And maybe that's okay for now. Maybe I need more time to heal before letting someone else into my life. Or maybe I'll never be able to completely trust again, and I'll have to learn to live with that. What I do know is that I don't regret cutting my mother and Amber out of my life. Some people would argue that forgiveness is for yourself, that holding on to resentment only hurts you, but I don't see it that way. I see boundaries as protection, and if someone can't respect them, then they have no place in my life, and that's okay. Not everyone has to understand it, not everyone has to agree, but it's my life and my decisions. So yeah, here I am, still dealing with all this. Still trying to rebuild my ability to trust, still rejecting my mother's attempts at reconciliation. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. If someday I'm going to change my mind, or if this is permanent. For now, I'm okay with how things are. My father is okay, I'm okay, and that's what matters.